everybody. I'm Candid Stanisci, and welcome to Leaf Talk here on the Spanglish World Network on Zingo TV, channel 250. Please remember to download the Zingo TV app at the respective app store for iOS and Android devices. While you download, make sure you rate and leave a comment. Both apps are absolutely free. Zingo TV is available on Google, Chromecast, Amazon Fire TV sticks, Roku sticks, and also on all smart TVs 2016 forward. Now on Leaf Talk, joining me is Aaron William Freeland. Aaron, how you doing? How's your week going? How did
Doing
it
well
go?
so far.
Ain't much of it left.
Yeah, thank goodness.
Well, it depends if you think this is the back end of the week or the front end of the week.
Well, for me, this is the back end. We've got the Argonauts game tomorrow.
Yeah, tomorrow afternoon at 3:00.
And then the clocks fall back for Sunday morning, which means I get an extra hour's sleep, which is awesome.
Perfect.
And then the event that I've been waiting for, the U.S. election goes next Tuesday.
Oh,
so yeah, that's like my Super Bowl, man. It's hilarious.
You know what drives me crazy about the U.S. election? You can't use the term bingo card because, gosh, there's way like a bingo card has what? What's the 70, 75 goes up 71, 75?
75, I think, is
75. Yeah, 15, yeah. 74. 15 times 5. 15 times 5.
But then there's a free square in the center.
1.
Yeah.
And that's the -1. I think it's 74. I'm really not sure. I was just trying to act as if I was smart. I'm not really that smart. The point being, there are more than 74 numbers that could be picked depending on what happens. And when I'm talking, I'm not talking about elected officials. I'm talking about what happens on that night when the people start voting. That's like 1 and 2. And then the other 72 are what happens after the election closes. That's how many things you have on a bingo card that you have to pick that could happen. It's going to be, oh my God. Oh, it's going to be there are people already who are starting to lose it. They're frightened to death of what the future might hold. We're here to talk about the Leafs. We'll talk about that further. But, unfortunately, Aaron and I are a bit of political geeks, so we get a kick out of seeing some of this stuff. But I think it's fair to say, Aaron, there is some trepidation even in your heart.
There is, just because I know that, for instance, U.S. election law bans slogans and T-shirts of the individuals who are running. I didn't used to think that was necessary, but based on how easily some people have been fooled and swayed by TV and whatnot, it does now make sense to me that they would ban that, because someone just walking in there could, on a whim, change their vote based on whatever T-shirt somebody was wearing or whatever hat. Now, we've seen instances already in the States of this happening where defiant individuals are trying to pick fights with election workers who are coincidentally volunteers. There were even a couple of people that just decided to vote topless because they were told they couldn't wear their shirts. It was
well, that or be pointless.
Yeah.
So they went with topless.
Yeah.
Man, there's so much I want to say. I'm going to say one last thing. I'm going to say that caught me completely by surprise, and I went, what's that? Things that make you go, was that the thing? Remember back in the day? Things that make you go, Well, the thing that made me go, was when they mentioned, and they were interviewing a 23-year-old young lady who said she was watching something her father was watching. What she saw was the Access Hollywood tape. Aaron, that was like 9 years ago. She was 14.
Never seen it before.
She never saw it. She never saw it before. And think about it. Of all the new voters that are just turning 19, I guess is the voting age in the U.S. It's 18 or 19. I'm really not sure. I think it's 18 in the U.S. We have the 19. I think they're the 18. They like the number 18. So just imagine. This could have been the second election she could have voted in. But it was the first time she saw that recording and looked at her dad and said, "Dad, is this real?" He goes, "Oh yeah." And just imagine how shocked I was to understand that someone mature enough to appreciate or not appreciate what happened back then and realize how many new fresh eyes and ears are hearing about this guy that wants to run for president. It's amazing. It totally it made me go, interesting.
You know, and it's it's a trend that I've seen a lot on TikTok recently too. Is people reacting to seeing that video and a lot of other stuff that he said in the lead up to the 2016 election for the first time, and a lot of them are blown away by it. And
Absolutely.
you know, like
Absolutely.
Anywho,
On the
Leafs.
same, yeah, well, on the same, in the same vein, her brother was talking to his dad, and he asked his dad, he said, "Dad, what are you watching?" "Oh, previous Stanley Cup champions." And his dad was watching 1967. The Leafs won the Stanley Cup. He looked at his dad and he said, "The Leafs haven't won since then, Dad?" And that made me
Yeah.
go, no, didn't make me go home. It would make me go, yeah, well, oh well, there
I
you
mean,
go. So that's my version of a segue. For those of you that don't know what a segue is, it's not only a thing you stand on and it moves. There's also, anyway, a verbal segue. So here we are, I got to say, I'm impressed by a lot of things in life, but what impressed me more than anything with the Leafs this week is on the same the same afternoon, the evening of an afternoon, Nylander scores 2 goals after the coach saying, "Dude, you got to clean up your act. Come on, man, you're better than this." So what does Nylander go out and do, Aaron?
he goes out and scores 2 goals. You know what? After the beating that Seattle had laid on Montreal on Tuesday, I was slightly concerned. Um, they beat Montreal 8-2. It was a butt kicking from start to finish, and then they're coming into Toronto on Thursday night, and Matthew Nyes had a goal in his third consecutive game now. He's now up to 6 goals on the season. Nylander, with his 2, leads the Leafs with 8. The Kraken were already
And don't
down
forget to
Vince Dunn.
mention, Austin Matthews had his 5th goal.
Yes, he did. And that, sir, was a goal. He banked it off the dasher and put it right into the middle of the net from just about his blue line, which was an absolutely amazing shot.
Did he call it?
You know what? He very well may have. I couldn't hear it from up in the 300s, but I'm
Did
pretty
it
sure
count?
yeah. Oh, yeah.
So then he must have called it because, they're not going to let a bank shot count if he didn't call it.
He just Kobe'd it right
Sorry,
in the
Ed.
middle of the net.
I interrupt. I apologize as well.
Now, unfortunately, Wall wasn't able to pull off the shutout. Tolvanen actually scored.
Almost.
3:28 left. Decord was on the bench. Decord had actually been on the bench with about 5 minutes left in the third period. They were desperately trying to get anything going. The Kraken were already down Vince Dunn, and Brandon Montour had actually gone back to Seattle for the birth of his second child. So they were a little short-manned on that at that point. I think what actually really got everything rolling was the icing that they took with about 10 seconds left in the first period, where the Leafs managed to run a set bang bang play off the faceoff to get Matty Nyes to put the puck into the back of the net. This is, interestingly enough, Tavares is the 5th Leafs player aged 34 or older in the past 50 years with 10 or more points through his first 10 games of a season, with his assist on Nylander's first goal. So,
Now,
I mean,
I'm taking my medication.
no worries.
Do you know pills come in gummies now?
Really? Excellent. Yeah. Who knew?
I just want to swallow it. I don't want to chew it. But anyway, Yeah, when I said gummies, about 4 or 5 people said, "Oh, really? He's taking them while he's on." No, no, this is medication. Well, that's vitamins, kind of a medication. Anyway, yeah, now I forgot where I was. Now that makes me people think that that's actually what never mind.
I was gonna say, if you've already forgotten where you are, those are really fast acting gummies, my dude.
Anyway, the Leafs in this game did what they do often, what amazes me about this team, they are they're probably a team that is frustratingly hot and cold. And the problem with their hot and cold is it's not very predictable. Like, well, what we saw against Winnipeg. Here's a team that hadn't lost all season, the hottest team in the league. The Leafs lose to two teams that may or may not make the playoffs and lose, and then play Winnipeg and win. And then you're going, okay, so they beat Winnipeg. So Seattle's probably, I would have thought the same thing you thought after the Montreal game. I would have thought because of the Leafs beating Winnipeg that they would have come back with a stinker. Well, guess what? They didn't.
Yeah,
That's why they're so unpredictable.
they genuinely are, and it's so frustrating because you never know which Leaf team is going to
No,
show up, right? That's
no.
that's the toughest part in all of this in being a fan is you never know which Leaf team is going to be there. It's either going to be the team that had their Wheaties this morning, and they're up to nothing in the first 5 minutes, or it's going to be the team that had too many carbs the night before and rolled out of bed like 20 minutes before the game.
It is. It's also one of their endearing qualities, and by endearing, I mean the love-hate relationship that they develop with their fans. This feeds into that love-hate relationship, that endearing quality that makes Leaf fans come back for more. And I say that and I mean that respectfully, even though it may sound like, Leaf fans are kind of creatures for punishment, kinda,
I mean,
kinda.
kind of, maybe we are. They are predictably unpredictable. I think is
And and I'm not here to talk about the Leafs and their Stanley Cup, chances. That's not what I mean. But I am going to roll forward just for the sake of this continuous thought that we're having here. And then, like this is the way they play. This is the way they play in the playoffs. And then they get in the playoffs. And if they ever do win the Stanley Cup, there's going to be so many Leaf fans that are going, okay, this is the series that they're going to lose. Okay. I know they're ahead 3-2. They'll lose 2 games and they'll be out. Then they'll win. And then they go to another series. And then, no, this, no. I tell you, Aaron, I am convinced the night that they win the Stanley Cup, Leaf fans are going to wake up in the middle of the night saying,
no, we're not going to believe it.
it's
It's
not
that simple.
possible. It's not possible. That's what's fun about being a Leaf fan.
We're not going to be able to believe it. I think is the best way to put it. That is just one of those. There's no way, you know.
Well, they removed a player from their roster, Timothy Liljegren. You and
Mhm.
I both knew that he was headed out. I think everybody knew it was telegraphed.
Yeah,
And I think, I don't know. Matt Benning has roots here in Toronto. At least his uncle and his dad played for the Maple Leafs. For those of you that don't know. So he has family ties here, along with Domi. This is starting to look like the Blue Jays. You know what I'm saying? You hear what I'm saying?
yeah, yeah. It definitely is. There's a lot of legacy hires, for lack of a better term. Yeah, Liljegren went to the Sharks for defenseman Matt Benning, a third round draft pick in 2025 and a sixth round pick in 2026. San Jose owns the third round selections previously held by Edmonton and Colorado. Toronto gets the earlier selection as part of the trade. Bennings played 7 games this season so far for the Sharks. He played just 14 for San Jose last season because he had season-ending hip surgery in January. This continues a trend where Leafs tend to pick up players who have been injured or were most recently injured. Now, Benning has actually recorded 17 goals and 85 assists in 464 career NHL regular season games with San Jose, Nashville, and Edmonton, along with 5 assists in 24 playoff games. Liljegren has only played 1 game for the Maple Leafs this season, but that's $3 million that they managed to get off the books. Um, I am
And
not
and
sure what sort of
sandpaper and
caption and Gannery.
sandpaper is part of his game.
What's that?
Sandpaper's part of his.
Yes. Yeah, he is one of those players that will throw a lot of hits and block a lot of shots, much to the detriment of his own physical health. But that's okay. We tend to expect that of our defensemen these days.
Well, he's a right-hand shooting defenseman as well.
And I'm glad that they're getting a right-handed defenseman, but at the same time, I don't necessarily think it's 100% necessary.
See, I
Um,
do. We can
okay.
agree to disagree.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. Um, I'm looking at his I'm just trying to look at his contract here. It's only $1.25 million. So he's in year 3 of 4 of that particular contract. The good news is if he doesn't work out here, that is variable. But
Well,
he's
all of
also
it except 100 grand,
yeah,
right? All of it
and and
except
that's
100
and
grand.
that's not going to and that's not going to affect the Leafs too negatively in any event.
So in other
Um,
words, that's 2.9 million off the cap, roughly speaking.
roughly, yeah, which is something that the Leafs kind of need at this point, I think,
Well,
because they're
it
hard
helps
up.
them in activating their players that they have. They have 2 players coming off short-term LTIR,
Hmm.
or TIR, short-term, uh, and they're going to bring them back. Um, the Leaf organization, at least in this version, what I congratulate Trey Living for is that he's doing the opposite of the Dubas way of doing things. The first thing Dubas does when he's about to make a trade, I think went through his head, he goes, okay, what draft picks am I going to give away to do this? With Trey Living, there's a different approach. He says,
Mm.
what draft picks am I going to pick up after making this trade? And I'm not even joking. I am dead serious. It's so good to see that when a Leaf general manager makes a trade, we can argue about the quality of the player going and coming, but really it's about the draft picks that come back. Why is that important to me?
Hmm.
Okay. Because we've gone through a few drafts where the Leafs literally almost had nothing. The bear was, the cupboard was on pretty much bare, right? And you and I both know because of the top end quality of the players they have and the lack of middle talent on the team. What do they use at the trade deadline? A lot of
Yeah,
draft pick.
exactly.
That's why I'm sorry it took so long, but I got there eventually.
It's okay. I knew you'd get there eventually. But as it currently stands, Connor Dewar has been loaned to the Toronto Marlies for an extended conditioning stint. What this means is he will be with the team for either 3 games or 6 days. The same for Yanni Hakanpää. That leads me to believe that those 2 players are on the verge of coming back. Um,
Absolutely there.
so this is important for the Leafs because that's going to be a valuable help for them. Um, Pacioretty was actually just moved on to the IR today, so we'll have to see where he ends up at the end of the night.
The other shoe fell.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
and the thing that's going on in those 2 players, Hakanpää Dewar, or Dewar, they go down temporarily until they're physically ready to come back. They're not. There's no. I think they said it was 6 days or 3 games that they can be down, something like that.
yeah.
If I remember what I read yesterday, so it has to do with them being healthy. There's a hair being split, and they're going. Obviously, it sounds like they believe they're going to come back, so they put him in this way instead of the other way. They go to gone down there unlimited time
Hmm.
in recovery. Right? They're going with the short term recovery as well as so it's going to be interesting. I'm dying to see this Hakanpää dude. There has been so much said about this guy. There has been a lot. There was a lot of talk early, and people going, "Well, why the heck they trade for this guy? He's unhealthy." Wait a second. Maybe the Leafs are going to avoid the trade because or his contract because he's not healthy. And remember all that stuff. I'm dying
I
to see
do.
what this guy looks like on the ice. He better be really good because all this stuff that's gone on. He better be good, is all I can say.
Uh, you know, Based on how he played when he was with Dallas, I have high hopes for him fitting in with the Leafs lineup. He's one of those players where uh, you'll notice when he's out of the lineup for sure once you get used to him playing. The problem is getting him into the lineup so he can play, right? So this LTIR conditioning stint is going to be good. For those of you who have AHL TV, you'll be able to catch him. The Marlies are out of town currently because of the Royal Agricultural Winters Fair for the next 3 weeks. They'll be back November 16th. And that game will be played at Scotiabank Arena at 1:30 in the afternoon
They
before
were
a Leafs
6
game
and
on
0
Sunday night.
last I looked.
They have actually, unfortunately, added a loss to that.
Oh.
That loss was in overtime to the Belleville Senators 2-1. So it's been a really fantastic start to the season for them. That put it that way. I'm very happy with where they're currently sitting.
Well, my heritage, being Italian names usually have a meaning, right? I'm just to go back to Hackenpah, is like if he was Italian, he would be Hackenpah, hack and paw. For a defenseman, that wouldn't be two bad qualities.
No, definitely not. It all depends on where he hacks you, but yeah,
So,
for sure.
so we'll see how much of a hack and par he is when he's on the ice. Let's go over to our first intermission. We like to talk news in our intermission. BC Port employers issue lockout. What?
Yeah, this has been an ongoing thing. They've been trying to resolve a labor dispute. Um, Basically, ports in BC could potentially be paralyzed again starting next week. There's a
Like,
province-wide lockout notice from employers against a union of more than 700 foremen. The BC Maritime Employers Association said in a statement that it'll defensively lock out members of the International Longshore and Warehouse Union Local 514 starting Monday at 8 a.m., which will effectively shut down all cargo operations province-wide, but leave cruise ships and operations for grain vessels unaffected. The lockout is meant to facilitate a safe and orderly wind down of operations in light of escalating and unpredictable strike action, because the union has issued a 72-hour strike notice for job action, also starting Monday at 8 a.m. Local 514 President Frank Morena said that the workers had only planned to engage in limited job action, such as an overtime ban, and it was the employers who have, at this point, completely overacted by threatening a full-scale lockout.
let's talk about, excuse me. Okay, judicial recount date set for the BC ridings to wrap up provincial election.
Yeah, it's been a long road getting from there to here. We were actually supposed to have an answer by now. One of the ridings that we're looking at, which is Surrey Guildford, initially there was only a difference of 7 votes, which works out to 0.01% of the actual votes in the riding. Sorry, 0.1. Now, both ridings, Kelowna Centre and Surrey Guildford, saw the margin of victory within a specific threshold that triggers a judicial recount after the final tally of mail-in and absentee ballots from the election, which was originally held back on October 19th. The NDP candidate is leading his Conservative opponent by 27 votes now in Surrey Guildford, whereas the Conservative candidate in Kelowna Centre is beating her NDP opponent by just 38 votes. So both of those need to be recounted under BC legislation. Surrey Guildford was the only riding where the winner changed during final ballot counts, giving David Eby's NDP the narrowest of majorities with just 47 seats.
Alberta Premier braces for a crucial party vote.
It's interesting to see how the worm is turning here. Danielle Smith originally came to power after Jason Kenney had a terrible party confidence vote. He only got 51% of the vote at a scheduled party leadership review. Smith has in the past only received 54% approval from the party. So it sounds like they're going to have some work to do in order to actually get themselves over the hump and to, make sure that she stays in power. There's also Tory and Liberal leaders stumping outside Halifax for the Nova Scotia election, which is coming up on November 26th. Tim Houston is spending his second consecutive day in Cape Breton, and Liberal leader Zach Churchill is scheduled to be in his home riding of Yarmouth, and his party is expected to release a statement on illegal lobster fishing in that part of the province.
Absolutely, yes. And how about not the U.S. Sorry, Nova Scotia Party stump outside. Well, you just said that.
Yeah.
And the U.S. election, how it could affect markets.
Well,
Sorry, I had an emergency call from somebody. It's not a tragedy, but it's distracted me. Carry on, Aaron. I
I
apologize.
understand completely. The whichever candidate wins the U.S. presidential election next Tuesday, experts are saying investors are going to be relieved to shed some uncertainty over what kinds of policies to expect. Macroeconomic factors like interest rate cuts and geopolitical tensions will be far bigger influences on markets in the coming year than the outcome of the election. Um, when you really look at it, what we're looking at is which candidate can play a more critical role in shaping economic growth, according to Brianne Gardner, who's the senior wealth manager of Velocity Investment Partners at Raymond James. Kamala Harris's promises are focused on domestic competitiveness, particularly amongst renewables, semiconductors, and infrastructure. On the other hand, Trump is likely to cut taxes, specifically corporate tax rates, which will boost profits. But at the same time, um, his idea of imposing more tariffs is going to make goods more expensive internally. So that's something that the American people will have to look out for.
And here's something for those of you that may or may not understand how tariffs work. I'm not here to tell you I understand 100% how they work, but I just want to make this little point that I heard that educated me and makes sense to me. A tariff is something that you put against a country on stuff that they bring to your country. Fair, Aaron? Am I
Yes.
right so far? So
Hmm.
now what happens is the president and whatever the presidency, the administration can put a tariff on televisions coming from X, right?
Yep.
They can put a tariff on from X. We all understand and know that. I know the Harris is referring to it as a tax. It's not important, a tax or whatever, but what it is, it's money attached to that item coming into the country that has to be added to the cost that that country is charging for that item. So it's paid by the customer, which makes that item less uh, tempting for people to buy, right? It isn't the tariff they put on that item that's the issue. Think about this, folks. Now you have a president who decides what he's going to tariff and what he isn't going to tariff, which is really the issue here. So, in other words, if he's got friends, he has a way of basically doing a favor to people he likes by saying, you know what? I won't put a tariff on the stuff you're importing. But you know that person over there that I don't like, I'm putting a tariff on there. If anybody thinks that Trump is going to put tariffs on or off for the good of the American people, man, you don't know that Charlton very well. And that's the part of the tariff thing that I didn't understand until somebody tweaked that little thing. So it's not about who he tariffs, it's about why he tariffs somebody and why he doesn't tariff somebody else, if I can use that term.
The easiest way to look at it is this as well. If he puts a tariff, for example, on steel, any company that uses Chinese steel to build something, as a result of that tariff, has to pay more to import it.
And
Because
add
they're
to the
paying that
cost of,
additional tariff on that Chinese steel, when it goes into a good end product, the company, in order to make sure that they continue to make profit under the great free market capitalist system, has to charge you, the customer, more money. That's how
and
it works.
just for the sake of conversation, it doesn't necessarily have to be steel, but if you have two different places, two different groups that offer the same product, you can decide to tariff one and not the other.
There you go.
Close the loop. All right, let's go over to the second period and talk about John Tavares.
Yeah,
West.
he. What do you think? How do you think he's been performing so far?
Are we talking about what he really gets paid or the cap?
Well, I'm talking about his performance as compared to his salary when it comes to his performance so far this season.
Well, he's I think leading the team in points, isn't he?
He
Somewhere
currently
around
has
there.
11 points in 10 games and has recorded a point in 8 of the past 11 games that they've played so far, or 10 games that they've played so far.
Well, you do know that one of the byproducts many felt of him losing the captaincy was that he could concentrate on his game. This could be a part of that being true.
for sure. I mean,
What I think.
he has been very productive. He is coming off an illness where he lost about 10 pounds.
Yep.
And that was only a
Flu-like
couple of weeks
symptom.
ago. But at the age of 34, he's currently scoring at the rate of greater than a point a game, which is higher than he's been scoring in the past couple of seasons. Yeah, his deal carries a cap hit of $11 million. It's in his last year, but he's basically playing right now as if he wants to be here for at least another 4 years, if not more.
I think the way he should look at it, he could be here for one more year. I don't think he's a long-term contract guy. Aaron, you can't make him just because he's having a good first 10 games of the season, first 11 games of the season.
I understand that more than anybody
know.
else, man. I'm not pushing for him to have a long-term deal.
I just want to make sure. I just want to make sure you're not drinking too much Kool-Aid.
No, I just want John to be happy. That's
Well,
all I'm
you
really
know, you know what I want. I want you to be happy. I love John as much as you can love him. I think he's awesome. I think he's a wonderful man, a great character guy. But the reason he's in Toronto and the reason he signed a contract and he was signed to a contract is because he was supposed to be one of the reasons why there could be a parade down Yonge or Bay Street, right? And so that's all that matters to me from the perspective where I sit, where I'm on the side of the fans first and foremost, and the fans deserve more than just a player that's a good player. It's beyond the players now. There is no, as a Leaf fan, I don't think Leaf fans are interested as much in individual performances except to criticize, I think, and maybe to brag about maybe a little. But I think Leaf fans know what the priority is, Aaron. I think you know what the priority is. The rest of that stuff is just cannon fodder. You know, the where the rubber hits the road is, does the rubber hit the road on a vehicle carrying a Stanley Cup somewhere here in Toronto? That's where the rubber hits the road, and that's all that matters. And it's great. It's great that Tavares, and to be fair, it's great that Tavares is playing well in a manner which could contribute to what we just talked about, which is ultimately what we're talking about. So to your point, so I don't sound like I'm being that negative, and I didn't mean to make fun of what you're saying because that wasn't my intent. To sum it up, what I'll say is this, is that he is a talented human being. He's been a great hockey player in his time. He's taken the C being removed from him in a very class-like manner. We can argue about whether it was classless or classy of the Leafs to do that for Austin. But the fact is he's a good guy, and it's good to see him doing well, which I think is the underlying feeling that you're having about him.
Yeah, that's pretty much what it boils down to at the end of the day. The end goal is always to be lifting the cup.
Yeah.
You know, and every year we're planning the parade. You know, we have a bombastic start to the season. We decide we're going to start planning the parade, and then the wheels fall off right around the All-Star break. We barely make the playoffs and play Boston again. And, you know, this is the ongoing saga that is the Toronto Maple Leafs.
I'm telling you, this could be the year that Toronto plays. If Toronto makes the playoffs, they could end up playing Ottawa,
which would also be a very interesting scenario.
Saying, you and I both know how good Ottawa can be, and they haven't been, but they can be.
Oh, so, for sure.
That would make it. That would Battle of Ontario would be very interesting. Be great to have a Battle of Ontario, like to decide who goes to the Stanley Cup. Wouldn't that be awesome?
It would.
That can't happen.
It would warm my cold frozen heart.
Yeah, it could happen. What am I saying? Of course it could happen. Because any two teams can play any two teams in the Eastern Conference because of the wild card scenario situation.
Exactly.
Right? So, yeah, so it could happen. That would be awesome. Toronto and Ottawa playing for the final to go to the Stanley Cup. And while I'm living a pipe dream, it'd be great to see Calgary and Winnipeg, or any two teams in the Canadian side there, playing for the Stanley Cup in the final of the Western Division. And that's after, you know, I don't see here that did you mention anything about the team, the Four Nations Cup? Maybe we'll do that next time. We'll do that.
We can certainly cover that next time.
There's the rosters are starting to be fleshed out, right? There's a couple of players that are definite, and people are starting to project who who those players will be on those teams. And when I was watching some of that, what it came down to, it sounded a lot like, and even looked like it when I looked at the players that were being cut for the American and the Canadian team. I kind of liked the American players that were being cut better than the Canadian players. In other words, the depth of the U.S., I think for the first time, especially with forwards, even defensemen actually, look stronger than Canada, the second best players. Which is
No,
something
they
we always,
on paper, I
yeah,
think the
yeah, yeah,
U.S.
yeah.
team.
On paper, yeah.
I think that the U.S. team is much stronger than the Canadian team.
Especially in net.
Yep. There are unfortunately a dearth of really top flight Canadian goalies at this point. A lot of them are coming out of the States, and I think the reason why is because it's basically out of necessity. At this point, I think for the Four Nations Cup, the United States has been better at putting a roster together, comprehensive roster, whereas Canada has been much better at putting players together.
Yeah.
You know,
Oh,
the
it's going to be
U.S.
interesting. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Sorry,
sure.
carry on with what I'm sure you want to talk about World Series.
You know, did you happen to watch any of the games there, Frank?
Well, let's just say that before there were Blue Jays, I was a Yankee fan.
I'm sorry. It was actually interesting
It
to
was a
see.
mind-blowing way to lose the World Series. It was mind-blowing. 5-0, Aaron.
You've seen innings like that before, though.
Oh, absolutely. As a Blue Jay fan, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, a lot.
As a Blue Jay fan, yeah.
You don't expect the Yankees to put together an inning like that.
And just think, there were 6 ex-Blue Jays on the Dodgers that won a World Series. 6.
And huge congratulations to Teoscar, to Kevin Kiermaier. Like I'm so happy for those guys.
Good for them. So they win the World Series. Well, what a great series. You know, New York, LA, in America, especially whether if you're on the left or right coast, that's the big deal, right? I'm sure the people that fly over states aren't that big thrilled. They're not that thrilled about that series. But all the big cities, east and west, this was something they could really gnaw on. But it didn't last long. 5 games. I thought it would go a little further. I thought.
I honestly, after seeing the way some of the Yankees fans behaved during Game 4, I was really kind of hoping that LA would have been able to close it out then. But I'll take the Game 5. You know,
was that amazing? Was that amazing? You didn't even have to watch it in slow motion. The way the attempt to pry the glove open, take the ball out, to catch it seemed to take forever for that to happen.
Here's the thing, man. You're paying to watch a baseball game, not participate in the baseball game.
I don't even think that ball was in the seats. I think it was right on the line.
No, it was over the padded area. It was definitely over the padded area.
It wasn't into the seats.
No. Reminds me of Jeffrey Meyer.
Exactly. Okay, let's go over to hockey again, and we'll go to Ovechkin, and he scored his 858th goal of his career.
He is rapidly approaching Gretzky's record. At this point, he scored his 858th career goal and had 2 assists, beating the Habs 6-3 last night. He's now 37 goals away from breaking Wayne Gretzky's record. After making Caden Primo the 176th different goaltender he's scored on, he's on pace for 45 goals this season, which will put him at 895, and perhaps beyond that this spring. Before scoring with 7:33 left in the third period, Ovechkin also set up goals by Tom Wilson and Alexei Protas. Wilson ended an 0-for-22 power play drought with his team's leading 6th goal of the season. There's an interesting stat for you. Tom Wilson, leading goal scorer on the Washington Capitals. Who'd have thunk it?
Well, he's a good offensive player. He just his biggest talent is, his pugnacity. That's his big thing. Let's go over to Ottawa, one of our favorite teams. Brady Tkachuk passes into 6th place in all-time scoring for the Senators. Tell us all about that.
So Brady's just turned 25. Um, so he seems a little bit young to already be considered amongst the greatest to ever play in the 32-year modern day history of the Ottawa Senators. But with 2 goals in the 8-1 win that Ottawa had against St. Louis, that pushed him past Mike Fisher and into 6th place on the team's all-time goal scoring list. Next up is Danny Heatley, who scored 180. Kachuk is currently sitting at 168, followed by Marian Hossa. At this pace, he could potentially catch, uh, maybe even tie Alexei Yashin, who has 218 goals for the Sens.
Oh
It's
wow.
going to take him a while to catch Daniel Alfredson, who had 426 goals for
Ah,
Ottawa,
yeah.
and Maple Leaf legend Jason Spezza, who had 251. But all of those milestones are, or at least the 218 is potentially within his grasp. If not this year, then early next.
Yeah, they're attainable. Yeah, good player, good tough player, kind of playoff kind of guy, and he watched his brother win a Stanley Cup, so we know he's extra motivated to be a part of getting into the playoffs and getting a chance to punch his ticket, to a Stanley Cup final. And good
Yeah,
luck to him. He's a tough kid. Good for him. Let's talk about Winnipeg, and they're still undefeated, just not at home, on the
yeah,
road.
they are currently undefeated. They managed to beat Detroit 6-2. Um, this is a big one because it was a game where Kyle Connor recorded his 500th career point. Um, Now, it didn't start out really going in Winnipeg's favor. Detroit forced a couple bad turnovers just to sort of put them back on their heels. Um, a lot of odd man rushes from Detroit in the first 5 minutes of the first period. So, um, you know, but Winnipeg finally managed to turn it on and turn it around. The question now becomes, who are the Detroit Red Wings? Because I don't think they've managed to establish an identity for themselves so far this season. Um, they're good at taking advantage off the rush, but other than that, there's no real identity for them. Winnipeg managed to pick them apart, so happy to see that. But we'll have to see where Winnipeg ends up in the division because I'm anxious to see what
Absolutely.
comes next.
Let's talk Utah and what they did to Calgary.
Yeah, they thoroughly dismantled the Calgary Flames 5-1. Um, it's one of those things where they managed to push over 500 again. They closed October with 12 points in the bag and sitting in the second wild card spot in the Western Conference. That was important for them. But Calgary is just having a whole passel of trouble this year. Hopefully they'll be able to turn it around. Like you mentioned, I would love to see more Canadians. I'd like to see all 7 Canadian teams make the playoffs this year.
Yeah,
Ideally, that would be
that's
fantastic to see.
total selfishness. I'm
Of
waving
course.
the red and white flag. Absolutely. Let's talk about Draisaitl, the Oilers, and how they beat the Predators.
So, Draisaitl had 2 goals. He had an assist, and the Oilers ended up pulling a 5-1 win out over the Preds. Victor Arvidsson, Corey Perry, and Zach Hyman also scored, and Calvin Pickard made 26 saves for the Oilers. They've won 3 of their last 4. After starting the season like a house being flooded, they just couldn't seem to make any headway and always seemed to be underwater. Edmonton's now pulled themselves to 5-5-1. They are basically Bettman 500 with 11 points. It's good to see the turnaround. Put it this way, I was vaguely concerned for them earlier in the season just because they seem to be making no headway whatsoever.
Let's talk about the Canucks and their former goaltender. They can't beat them. They lose 6-0 at home to the New Jersey Devils.
Now, it's tough to win when you only get 20 shots, but that has been the hallmark of the New Jersey Devils teams for the past at least a decade. They're going to limit you on shots. They're going to make sure that they're low quality chances. Archer Seelovs, unfortunately, did not have a good game at all. Markstrom managed to stop all 20 shots he faced, but Seelaw's allowed 6 goals on 22 shots, which is, to put it kindly, not good. That is verging on 720, 730 territory for an NHL goalie, and that is never good. Without a doubt, this has to have been Vancouver's worst game of the season, their biggest loss. They couldn't generate any offense and gave up way too many scoring chances in the second and third periods. While every team, I understand, has off nights, it showed that Vancouver may have a ways to go before they're actually considered a contender. On their 4 power plays that they had on the night, Vancouver only managed 3 shots and gave up a shorthanded goal. They're 2-17 in their last 6 games. So I don't know what they're going to have to do to fix their power play, because it's not a question of if, it's a question of they have to.
Absolutely. Yeah. Let's go back to the Leafs, and I wanted to talk about Austin Matthews, and we talked about the former captain Tavares and how maybe the burden of being captain removed has allowed him to play freer and concentrate on his game more than concentrating on being captain. With Matthews only having 5 goals because 8 is leading the team. Is it fair to expect that there's a bit more of a burden on his shoulders because he's the captain, and to expect him to score as many goals as he scored in the past may be difficult considering his responsibility shift?
As it currently stands, he is on pace for at least a 40-goal season, and no, I mean that's nothing to sneeze at all. I mean, he did have a 69-goal season last year. I understand that people want to see him duplicate that again, but yeah, with 5 goals and 5 assists, he's on pace right now for about a 75 point season.
Which isn't enough, but
no, I mean it's definitely not. We
what's
haven't
the
seen
weakest
him.
part what's the weakest part in his game, do you think?
Honestly,
is it shooting? Is putting himself in a position to score?
his shooting percentage this year is under 10%.
That's not
that
good.
is no, and it's a regression from the mean. He normally shoots in and around the 14 to 15% range. Once that corrects itself, once he's a little more stable, a little more familiar with his role as a captain, and he's a little more comfortable with what he needs to be doing out on the ice, that is going to start to rise. There are portions of the game where he doesn't seem all that comfortable and doesn't necessarily look like he's having that much fun. But as the season progresses and as he settles into being a captain a little bit more, that should change.
I think the real problem in his game isn't really just him; it's the power play. That power play is worth at least a point or two a game. It should be worth a point or two a game, and a point or two a game over an 11-game span is 22 points. I know that's highfalutin, but it's still the point, right? So their power play is so weak that there's games that they're not winning because the power play is not working. There's games that they're losing because the power play is not working, and they're winning games in spite of the power play. The power play has been a big, in my opinion, it's the elephant in the room with the Maple Leafs this season.
The Leafs, you're going to laugh when you hear this, Frank.
Go
The
ahead.
Leafs power play percentage so far this season is just ahead of Buffalo. The Buffalo Sabres power play percentage is 6.9%. The Leafs power play percentage is 8.8.
Doesn't that speak to what I'm saying?
It is, in a word, terrible.
It is. It's awful. It is downright awful. And it is, when you think about it, they're 6-4 and 1, right? They're 6-4-1. That's respectable points in a season. Plus, I go plus, right? They're
Yeah.
+2. They've got to be plus something. They can't be 500. 500 is you're on knife's edge to make the playoffs. They've got to be plus, and they're +2 right now. And they could easily in 11 games be +4 or 5 if their power play was middling. I'm not even talking about being, the monster that it was, second best in the league, third best in the league, the best in the league, because that's where they come from, right? That's where the core four drove this team, was on the power play.
And you look at teams that are having a little bit more success this season. Winnipeg, for example, their power play percentage is 44.8%. They are capitalizing on almost half of every single power play opportunity that they get.
Absolutely.
And their penalty kill is 81%. That puts them around 7th to 11th when it comes to penalty killing, which is just as important.
And if the two don't add up past 100, you're not doing well.
No,
right?
Yeah.
You take your power play and your penalty killing, it has to be over 100, maybe 110, for you to have a special team score that works for your team. They're under 100, and that's not good.
Yeah, the Leafs at 8.8 and 81.8 are sitting right at 90.6, which is not doing them any favors.
Nope. Not at all. It's something they have to deal with, and we'll see. But like I said, we're not here to push Leaf fans off a cliff, which is why I'm saying they are. Imagine with that big problem that they have, right, where they have their star player isn't scoring the way people hope he would. They're still 6-4-1. Not with some serious issues on the team.
It is one of those cases where they haven't started the season exactly great. The past 4 years they've started at about 500. We have had hopes for this team to be finishing each month net positive, but it doesn't always happen that way.
No, it doesn't.
I believe we're sitting tied for 10th right now in the NHL, which isn't tied for 11th with the New York Rangers, 1 point up on the Utah Hockey Club, 2 up on the Flames and the Oilers.
It's early enough in the season that I don't go by points. I go by plus numbers.
Yeah.
But they're plus points over games. Because if you look, New Jersey's way ahead of everybody. But when you look at their plus, they're really not. They're a lot less efficient than where they look.
Mm-hmm. Oh, for sure.
They're at a +5, having played all those games. So there's other teams that are doing almost as well, having played a lot less games. Aaron, this was awesome. Thanks for doing this. Really appreciate it.
Hey, always happy to, Frank. And can't wait to see you on Monday, too.
Yep. He's Aaron William Freeland. I'm Frank Stanisci. Thank you for watching Candid Frank Leaf Talk, seen live Fridays at 6 p.m. And, of course, we have Candid Frank live Mondays and Wednesdays. This show can also be heard on the Spanglish World Radio Network. For Leaf Talk, other news, entertainment, and sports programming we offer, please please check out SpanglishWorld.ca. Spanglish World. Watch it, hear it, read it, download it, and live it. Thanks for watching, everybody. Enjoy your hockey. It's back.